Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this video from any part of the world. I'm very excited to introduce this masterclass. It's fundamentals to basic computing, or you could call it computer basics. So in this masterclass, it's a crash course whether you are actually a student who is just getting started on your career into ICT and technology, or you are a baby bloomer, you have for so long heard about these computers, but you did not know how exactly each and every single thing adds up. So this is a crash course. You might even be in the top of your career. This is a beginner's course, and it could refresh your memory and also remind you of certain key principles and terminologies. But feel free, if you know most of these topics, you can actually also share your knowledge with us and we can learn from each other. Okay, today we start with module 1 of our computer fundamentals, and we are going to be looking at quite a very interesting, some interesting terminologies. But before even we start handling any physical hardware, or even talking about software, or even starting to dissect and look at things such as this, this is an integrated circuit board, which we know as a motherboard. Before we start digging deeper and understanding what is this, what function does it play, how does it connect, and most importantly, how actually can we assemble a computer and be able to make it function. Before we go into all that, we shall start with a few basic principles and a few definitions that I strongly believe are going to be of very great advantage. Yeah, so if I can just quickly, we want to start with defining what is a computer. A computer. What is a computer? So simply put, if we don't want to really complicate the definition, or for you for purposes of understanding it and not just cramming it, we all know that a computer is a device. It's a device, and this device is electronic. In other words, it uses electricity. So a computer is a device, it's a gadget, it's a tool, which actually is electronic in nature but uses devices to do what? So when we are trying to define what a computer is, we actually go to the nitty-gritty of what it does, its capability, its potential, and how it simplifies tasks. So as soon as you understand that, it is very easy for you to define what a computer is. So we say it is a device and it's electronic in nature. What does it do? First of all, it accepts data. One uses it to input data. It accepts data. After accepting data, later on we shall be talking about what do we mean by data, so don't worry about that. So it accepts data, and after accepting data, it processes that data. So we talk about its processing function. From processing, it stores that data. Storage. We shall also define what storage is. And from storing that data, it then outputs it as information. So, in other words, if I could just use these words to define what a computer is, I would say that a computer is an electronic device that is used to accept data, or that is used to input data, processes it, stores it, and it is retrieved or it is output as information. So we are putting in data. Data is something that is raw, unprocessed. And when we talk about data, we are talking about text, we are talking about images, we are talking about symbols, we are talking about numbers. So all that is data. So you can input in a data, and you can input in a computer data, and many times you input using a keyboard. So if I pressed any letter here, any character, the computer receives that data, but it can't make sense out of it until it is processed. So for you to make a sentence or to even make a calculation, you can come to the numeric keypad and say 78 or 78 plus 36 equals that function there causes the computer to process and analyze that data, and it gives you information, something that you can make sense out of. Otherwise, if you just punch in letters without them coming together to form a sentence or a paragraph, then you have no information to really understand. So that's an example of what we call data input that is then going to be output as information. So basically that is data. And storage speaks more of keeping for future use. So we have what we call storage devices that store data. We have what we call input devices that are used to input data. We have processing devices. We shall look at the central processing unit, that is the brain of the computer, later on in this module. Then we have what we call output devices. And output devices, these output information. They help you to display information, like the monitor. We shall be talking very, very thoroughly about the categories of these things. But to sum this first class off and to conclude our first lecture, I could say that there are two main things that we shall be talking about over and over again. We shall talk about software and we shall talk about hardware. And our next class is going to be hardware. Our next module is going to be hardware. But simply put, these two are some of the strong pillars of what make up a computer. Hardware is anything physical. So we shall relate to parts of a computer that are physical. Anything that you can touch with your hands on a computer, we call it physical, we call it hardware. So any physical part that you can touch with your hands, it is physical, it is hardware. Then software, this is intangible, you can't touch it. But these are actually instructions that tell your computer what to do. And both software and hardware have categories. So when it comes to hardware, we shall look at hardware that is external and hardware that is internal. Internal, that means it is inside the computer casing. External means it is outside. We shall look at this more in our next class. And when we talk about software, these are instructions that are actually telling your computer what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. So those instructions could be like printing. So it could be a software that one uses to print out. Those instructions could be for operating the computer, what we call application software. Operating software helps your computer to function, to switch on, to boot, and know which type of operating system it's working with. And that speaks a lot to its capabilities, its functionalities, and quite a number of things. So in software, we shall look at application software, and we shall look at software that we call the operating software. So that is it for this class. Hope you've learned something. Make any inquiries in the comment section. Let's meet in the next class where we talk about hardware. And right there, that's where this now will make sense. See you in our next module.